Hi and welcome to today's episode of Live Healthy Now. I have a really interesting conversation coming up for you today with Philly Ponniah, who is a financial wellbeing coach, and she works mainly with women to help them get in control of their relationship with money, to help improve their wellbeing. And I wanted to talk about this subject and bring it to you today because this is an element of your health and well-being that for many is completely overlooked, and yet it is something that can have a very big impact on how well you feel. So I'm excited to explore that with Philly today. So welcome to the podcast, Philly.
Thanks so much for having me on, Nicola.
You're very welcome. So what I do with each of our guests is just explore a little bit about your healthy lifestyle by asking what your most valuable healthy habit is.
I think it would probably be that I always cut up fruit and vegetable and have it in the fridge so that I've got two small children, so that if I come down to the kitchen, it either gets me off starting cooking quickly or there's healthy snacks for everyone. So that's quite a handy one to do.
Oh, definitely. I like the preparation in that. And are there any favourites, anything that you find goes down better than others?
Things like carrot sticks, hummus, weirdly, grapefruit. That's what I craved when I was pregnant with my first. And so we've always got that cut up. And my eldest really likes that, even though it's quite sour. So maybe it's because I ate a lot when I was pregnant. But yeah, so lots of sort of fruit and then obviously berries. They're sort of a big hit with the boys.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Because one of the things all around with, healthy habits is in the planning and the preparation, setting yourself up for success. So that's something which is, really handy. I don't tend to prep like that, but I do usually have berries in the fridge. They're favourites with me and my daughter. We like to get a handful of raspberries, strawberries. It's good to pop them in with some Greek yogurt as a quick late afternoon snack, for example. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I wanted to kick off with getting you to just explain a little bit more about what financial well-being is and the role that it can play in a lot of people's lives, especially women, and how it impacts their health.
Absolutely. Well, a study recently said that 71% of the UK, the most thing they're stressed about is money. So if you think about that, that's a really large percentage of our population. And if you're stressed, that can impact all areas of your life. And, everyone has access to money. That's how we pay for everything. So if that is causing stress, that will impact lots of areas of your life. And I think that applies to people across all levels of wealth. I deal with people who have varying levels of money. Some have large amounts of debt. Some have large amounts of money. It's amazing that actually, well, it's not amazing, but it surprised me to start off with that people with the sort of multi-millions are still experiencing stress and anxiety around money, not just, the people who don't have much money.
Yeah, that is really interesting, isn't it? And I've certainly heard that kind of thing being in the entrepreneur space of how, just because you earn a certain amount of money, it doesn't mean that those stresses go away, because a lot of people can have some limiting beliefs and a kind of negative story around money, can't there? Which, it's not about how much money you've got and whether you have affordability for things, but it's this relationship with money that can also be very challenging at times.
Absolutely. And that is one of the main things I help people with, that even as you earn more, if there's something that is impacting how you feel about money, it'll be a blocker to you, either asking for, to charge more, or it might stop you asking for a pay rise, or even as you earn more money, you spend it all. Sometimes people don't sort of often linked to their self-worth. They don't feel worthy of holding on to the money. And I see that with men. I see it with women. It's not just a woman thing. I see it with all my clients, that actually it might be something linked into how they feel about themselves, not about the actual money.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? And I guess, stress is a very common thing that's, comes out of money. But as you explained there, the impact money can have on your self-worth and self-belief can create so many other negative thoughts and feelings that play out into your confidence and your self-esteem and, you know, the way you feel about yourself and capabilities and what you're able to go after and enjoy in your life as well, which then can lead to a lot of challenges, you know, with mental health, especially because of the way you might be holding yourself back and negatively talking to yourself.
Absolutely. And that's where I love seeing the transformations from delving into it, because if you flip it onto the other side and then start exploring where these feelings are coming from and questioning, is it true? You know, quite often people will catastrophize what's going to happen, and it might not actually ever come to pass, whatever they're worried about. And so with often quite just a few conversations, and it doesn't have to be with someone who's a trained financial coach, it could be speaking to a friend or a family member. It could be really just starting to talk about what's on your mind. And I think that goes for more things than just money. But I know that money is one of those taboo topics that we don't talk about still. And actually, if people started having those conversations earlier, I think it would help, definitely with just general well-being.
Yeah, that's a really good shout, isn't it? Because
that's a really
you're right,
good shout,
especially with women, we hold a lot of stigma around money with ourselves, don't we? I know certainly when I worked in corporate, there was never any sharing of how much money you were earning or other facts about money in your life, you know, even in friendship groups and family. And, you know, do you think, or do you see that actually with clients that you work with, that is something which then is creating a lot of challenges in their happiness?
Absolutely. And what's interesting, and I've started to see a bit of a correlation between people who are earning more than anyone in their families ever earned before, can then cause a bit of a blocker, because actually, you know, you might want to keep that to yourself, or people start thinking you're really successful and then you can pay for lots of things. And if you haven't stopped to evaluate what you value, what you want to spend on, maybe some of what you have earned, you do want to pay for things for your family. You might want to spend some of the money, but actually I think sometimes with that sort of next generation of level of wealth being more, they can feel burdened or an onus to spend where they don't want to, and they get lots of requests coming in, especially if they start being quite successful. And actually that can cause a lot of stress too, because they then might not have enough money for their own family or for following their own dreams. So it's quite good for those people to, well, take a pause and actually have a look at what they really want to achieve with their life, and what they want to sort of spend on.
Yeah, and the generational challenges is a big one, isn't it? And I know that's something you're passionate about, and our values when we spoke previously when we'd first met are very aligned there, in that, you know, women are like this because of how we've been brought up, you know, the beliefs that we've inherited from our parents and other family members as we grew up about money and what money means for women. And certainly, I know I'm quite a bit older than you, Philly. In my generation, you know, we were, you know, my mum, for example, didn't have a career. She started work for the first time after she had me. I was the eldest of three kids. When I think I was maybe about 11, I would say, she started part-time work, and then she gradually went to full-time. So to me, I used to see my dad hand cash over to her for the housekeeping, because you didn't have direct debit cards in those days, you know, and that was kind of her being paid to stay at home, look after the kids, buy the food, put the food on the table, clean the house. And the impact of that can be really underestimated, can't it, for people who are not in our world and aware of these things, you know, in terms of how it affects your belief system and the impact that can have in your life. So, yeah, your kind of mission around this to help educate younger girls especially is a really important one. And I know you've been doing some work on that, haven't you, in the community?
Absolutely. And I think it's not just our parents, it's society. And I don't think it's necessarily, your age, my age. It's even people today. I think we've still got this sort of girl, boy, be a good girl. These comments still come through. And, the difference even between, I've got two boys and I've got nieces, and the difference between all girls at nursery, I do think there is a bit of a difference even today, even though there's lots of people really advocating well for, having, not just the pink clothes for the girls, the glitter, the unicorns, the uncomfy children's clothes for the girls, and actually sturdy shoes and supportive shoes and all this sort of stuff. I know various girls who just dress in the boys' clothes because it's comfier, they can muck around in it, and it's kind of much better. So I do think there's still today an element of don't make a fuss, be a girl, be kind of good, help people, and I think that filters through into how you are with all things. So the people pleasing aspect, these are things that, it probably took me till my late 20s to sort of drop that as my natural default, which is, a long time of pleasing people and saying yes and, giving out every slot of your diary because you don't want to let anyone else down. Well, actually, taking a step back and thinking, no, I need to protect my time. And I'm, even more like that now that I've got children. But it's all these societal influences, I think, are just as, they put the impression on children and people growing up with their money kind of even today.
Yeah, definitely. And so how do we go about that? Do you think it's about us as women building our self-worth and belief and modelling that to kids? And I know there's practical things to consider, like pension is a huge thing, isn't it? Where so many women didn't have a pension and still don't. Even women around my age group who didn't start work until much older, and the type of jobs they did meant that there wasn't a company pension to join up and be part of. How do we challenge that? Because as you say, it is a huge societal and cultural issue and something that we are progressing on. We're not particularly, I'd say, progressive, but, we are making inroads. But, as a parent, I know you've got daughters, or a daughter, I've got a daughter. And, how do we do this then as individuals?
Well, I've actually only got sons, but I've got lots of nieces.
Sorry.
So I'm kind of, no, that's fine. I think with auto-enrollment now, if you're employed, you will be given a pension. But again, it's sort of looking into what are they putting it into, what are they investing it in, and also can your company match what you're putting in? Certain, especially the bigger the company, they tend to kind of make a contribution as well as what you put in. And the younger you start, it compounds over time. And also there's the sort of penalty gap when you stop and have children. If you have maternity leave, if you don't go back to work and you stop paying national insurance contributions, but you can if you're claiming child credit, I think. Not my area of expertise, but I know that you can also go back and claim if you've been looking after children at home. So it's one of those things to look into because that can help contribute to your years working, and then that impacts how much you get in your state pension.
Yeah. And do you find that people who are coming to you do worry about this kind of thing, that they, especially women who have maybe found themselves separating from their partner or husband, their spouse, who have suddenly been thrust into having to manage money for the first time in their lives, and that learning has then made them realise the impact they might be having on their children and how to try to navigate that in a better way?
Well, I've had I'd say more conversations with women where they're earning more than that they were used to growing up, and so they want to learn how to talk to children about money in a way that it's so normal now to say, can you just order that for me on Amazon? And actually then you don't really get the value of what, I've actually earned money to buy this. And so it's sort of things like that, about setting up the conversations to include your children in your money conversations, and to make it normal, because our relationship with money, often our sort of impressions are formed before the age of 7. So actually it's trying to make these conversations normal as early as possible, involve them in like the family goals. Sometimes it doesn't have to be, if you don't want them to know how much you pay for your mortgage, maybe that's fine. And, I'm not going to talk about the mortgage of a 2-year-old, but, if you can sort of say, and there are some fun things you can do, say, here is the X amount of money. Do you want to work out what we're going to get in the supermarket? Little things like that involve them, get them thinking about money, what it actually is, and what it means for the family. Because otherwise, if you just kind of more and more packages arrive, I think it's quite hard to see what the value is. So if they can work with you and make it sort of more fun, then at least they're aware of, what it actually is and how it impacts the family.
Yeah, something that came to mind there as you were explaining that was, for my daughter being quite young, something that I really struggled with was the whole Santa Claus concept. And I know we can talk about that openly on here because there's no children listening, but this idea that somebody came and delivered all of this free stuff, so many toys that they were gifted, and it was all for them, and, having no concept about the fact that actually the parents were paying for these. It was like, I don't know whether I'm comfortable with this. It's like one big lie. And it's, for many parents, a very stressful and difficult time of the year financially. So I used to tell my daughter from her being quite young that, yes, Santa brought the presents, but the way it worked these days, because of how the world had developed, was that as a parent, you got to kind of sign off and input based on what you could afford and what you wanted your child to have and enjoy. And, I remember as she got a little bit older, questioning that and going, well, so how does Santa get the money? And started asking quite, intricate questions about the transfer of the money. It's like, that's all magic. Santa takes the money from our accounts. We communicate and we let him know because people can afford different things. Because you're right, I think there's the risk of that unattachment of value to things, as you say, because, Amazon, most people have, and obviously on the back of COVID, it became a bit of a running joke, didn't it, for most households about how many Amazon parcels would be regularly turning up. And then most families have subscription things like Netflix, Sky, Disney, not just TV, but other subscription game things and apps and so on that all hold value to them that can be very easily overlooked because it doesn't feel real when you just touch a button and go, yeah, I've done that, that's it. And I know for my child, one of the things I did very early was to set up a bank account, and I used Go Henry. I'm not advertising them because I know you have to pay a little fee to do it. So there are now other free alternatives with banks, but something where she could see on an app that she had herself what she had in there, and she could choose how much, she's 15 now, and we've done this probably since she was maybe about 8. And she controls her money completely. She doesn't ever ask me for money if she's going to the cinema or bowling or something like that, because what she gets is there for her to choose what she spends it on, whether that's, eating out, entertainment with friends, buying clothes, buying presents, even at Christmas time. It's all from her savings. And I think that's a good tool that a parent could try to put in place as early as possible, really.
Yeah, empowering them. And then when the money's run out, they know that that's what it is. Another thing I've sort of spoken about with some people is doing tasks around the house and putting a monetary value to it. So, having Post-its on the fridge, and they can choose what they want to do if they want to earn more money. And again, that's sort of, it depends how young or how motivated children are, but I think they find that quite fun in a game way, rather because they're actually getting paid for it. So it's like a sort of first job.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I know one of the things you've been speaking quite a lot about recently is obviously the cost of living crisis, which is putting more pressure than usual onto many families. And it's been fantastic to see some of the press coming out where you've been writing for some of the national newspapers and giving advice on how people can navigate it to try to support their well-being better. So, what tips could you give to someone listening about, the impact of the increase in pretty much everything that we use and have to spend our money on to live, in our homes as a family? What's some of the advice that you have been sharing there?
I'd say anything that you can automate that is positive, do that, such as, the day after you're paid, can you automate some of that into savings? So for some people, if they can't see it, they don't spend it. But then also to remove things that are automatic if they actually don't help us. So things like Apple or Google Pay are so handy, but actually it's very easy just to sort of tap your phone and, you can now do so much money that that's quite a good way to restrict. You then have to kind of get up, either go and get a card, or if you've pre-filled your bank details into any of the apps, if you don't want to, say, use Uber so much, remove them bank details, then that's an added extra bit of friction. Or if you want to don't order a takeaway, when people actually go through what they're spending, and some of the challenger banks kind of itemize what you're spending on. So I know Starling will tell you, either breaking it down by merchant or by category. You don't have to do it yourself. You can look in there and say, okay, actually I've spent 10% of my income on, and it will tell you. And then you might think, okay, well, can I adjust that a bit? What can I do that might stop that? Maybe it is preparing the vegetables or getting the groceries in that will mean you'll cook something rather than get to the end of the day, you're tired and you order a takeaway. Lots of little things like that, I'd say, to make it harder to do something that would be easy. And I know all these things are very easy and they are handy, but actually if it can help you save a bit of money, if you're sort of sitting on the sofa, and I've had quite a few people talk about impulsive spending, and especially when, COVID, people were buying packages, they kind of that dopamine hit of buying and ordering stuff online. By the time it arrived at the doorstep, that hit had gone, and then they'd actually just spent quite a lot of money. So I've been sort of talking to some people about that and how waiting 48 hours and just seeing, do you still want to make that purchase is, just quite a helpful thing to do. And if it's the sales time, unsubscribe from the emails that keep, because these these companies have big marketing spend. They know how to kind of hook you and think, oh, it's such a good deal. Whereas actually, if you haven't read about it, you won't know about that good deal, which is a good deal only if you want to buy it in the first place.
Yeah, some very simple but effective advice there. And putting resistance in the path of habits is one of the techniques I use to help people break bad habits. So although you might be listening thinking, oh yeah, but removing Apple Pay, oh God, I use that all the time. But if you are genuinely struggling and it's causing stress, then to relieve that stress, you do have to look at taking steps to do something differently. And that could be a very simple tool to apply and just see if it works. And if it doesn't make any difference, then you put Apple Pay back on. But, if you are struggling, then looking at where those big problems are, or the biggest problems are, is the starting point, really, isn't it? And I think the clarity on where your money goes is a key one, because in the world we live in, with automation, as you said, that means it's very easy to lose track of what you're spending until you look at your bank. And I know certainly in the past, I used to be someone that dreaded having to go on to the banking app. If I was, for example, going out with the girls and they said, oh, we need a £10 deposit for the restaurant, I think, oh God, I've got to go on the app and transfer that £10, and I don't want to see how little money I've got and what's being spent, because it's not real, is it? I think it's back to what we were talking about with kids. It doesn't hold maybe the same value as it used to when it was cash in hand, so to speak, because it's so easy and out of your mind, isn't it?
There was a sort of recent trend on TikTok where people were cash stuffing envelopes. And I sort of advise doing it, but in a sort of digital way with clients, because it was where, people were putting money in envelopes, literally saying like, this is for bills, this is for eating out, this is for, but in quite a few of the banks now, if they've got apps, you can choose, like I use Starling, there's spaces, and so there's a rounding up feature. So you can either round up to the nearest pound. If you spent £1.60, it'll put 40p in. Was that £1.60 to £2? Is that difference? I actually do 2 times what the difference is. And I think I've saved about £650 in about 6 months, just because it just goes, you don't notice it because it creams off that tiny bit every time. And it's the small bits that add up because they're so regular without you noticing. And you can obviously add money in as well, but it's those spaces and having purpose. I think giving your pounds a purpose is really good, a bit like you would with the envelopes. And so if that was you thinking you need £10 for going out for that deposit for the food, then actually you can kind of feel happy because you've actually assigned money for that, not sinking feeling the money's going out of my account. I was speaking to someone who set aside money for her and her child for the school holidays, and instead of thinking every day we're going out and we're spending money, they made it a bit of a game, and they thought about where could they actually, take some food from home, have a picnic, maybe get some chips on the beach, or the little things you could do. And they had a pot purposefully for the school holidays. And so rather than feeling the money's going out on all of this, actually it's a positive thing. We've, put money aside for this, the months leading up to it, and then it was there to spend.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea. And the Starling thing, I do use Starling, and I'm about to move my personal finances over to there because I use it only for business at the moment. But the spaces thing is genius. And one of my friends did tell me about the rounding up option, which again I think is just such a simple idea, but something, as you say, that could be very effective, where it's still your money, it's there, but it just moves it into somewhere that when you do then choose to spend it, feels like it's a reward, that you've accomplished that. So I think for me that feels like there's 2 themes coming through. One is getting in control practically of your finances, understanding how to manage your money, both in the day-to-day way, but also in your long-term investment to support your future. And they're 2 things that can really impact how well you feel now, especially stress levels, as we say. And then the other thing is kind of that mindset piece, isn't it? That whole belief system and the relationship that you have with money, and trying to improve that because of how it's generationally and culturally being brought to you.
Yeah, exactly. I always think of it as the practical and then the sort of psychological side of things, because once you've cracked that, and I typically start with that with people first, someone might come to me about something that is, I'm spending too much, I don't know how to control it. But actually, if we start with the mindset and awareness of where's this coming from? What does this actually stem from? Often sort of everything else starts falling into place, and quite often other areas of their lives will improve too. So.
And what do you see as some of the improvements that happen on people's well-being once they do get either in control practically or psychologically?
Well, I'd say taking time for themselves. Quite often, we do an exercise together to look at what you really value. And, someone I've been helping recently has decided to go from working 5 days a week to 4 days a week. She can afford it. She'd rather spend that 1 day a week, living now rather than, waiting to retirement. And so that's obviously quite a big change. But other things can be, I now get up and, do a bit of stretching in the morning or yoga. It's making time. I think once you stop and evaluate, how do you really want to live? I'm dealing with it from a money perspective, but actually money is just a tool to enable you to live the life you want. So it's not the end goal. It's just, it allows you, maybe you want freedom, maybe you want time with your children, maybe you want, a bit of autonomy in your schedule. It's really about the, I think small things come into your life that might be kind of making you healthier, happier. And again, I'd say not really to do with the money.
Yeah, I loved how you explained that there, that money is a tool, that it's not necessarily about the money. It's just that the impact the money might have in those different ways. And, that it's you becoming clearer about that. And for me, I think a lot of improving your health starts with that. It's that mindset piece of how do you feel and why do you feel like that, and what actually matters to you and why does that matter. And once you start to get clarity around that, then you can look at how you want to change your life. And quite often it's about simplifying it. A lot of people think, I can't be healthy because I don't have time. Actually, when you take steps to start to work on that, you'll find that it's not about the time. A lot of it is very simple and can be woven into how your life is already. And because of what it does to the way you feel like you're more in control, and so you feel calmer and less stressed and can enjoy things and have more energy. Absolutely.
It's even like things like investing. A lot of women are put off by the industry, and that's my background. I trained as an investment manager. That's what I've been doing for 12 years, and it's one of those things where actually a little bit of education and putting your money aside and maybe even automatically putting it in every month. It's one of those things that doesn't take a lot of time, and it can mean you start building up your your investment pot. From as soon as you start, that's great. It can start building, but I do think that's something that people are put off by because they think it's complicated. They think it's for time-rich people. They think it's for rich people, and so that's the sort of drum I'm banging as well at the moment a bit, just because I think it's part of the building your wealth strategy, and not enough women do it.
Yeah, I totally agree on that, and I think that's also another one of those habits we can model to children to teach them, to start that from a young age, to, as you say, compound that over time, because even if it's only £100 a month when you very first start working, or less than that, and you can add to it as your salary increases over the years, you can grow that. And sometimes it's not about the money itself either, it's what it's doing to you, as you say, from a wellbeing point of view, in that you're in control, you've taken steps to invest in you and your future, and that at some point you'll be able to gain something back from that. And I think that can really boost your self-esteem as well, can't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation, Philly. I think there's a lot, hopefully, that people can take away from this in terms of practical tips if you are struggling and feeling the impact now of the rise in cost of living. And also if you do have children, or if you haven't yet but may one day, to really think about this from a young age and get them involved. I love that idea of really being open as a family from your kids being very young, to just normalise money and spending and costs of things, and to also, I think, with that, be very mindful of the language you use, because again, from how we've been brought up, we are very automatic in the way we respond. When I was young, it was like, money doesn't grow on trees, and this house isn't a bank, just come and take whatever you want, and so on. All of those things feed your subconscious minds, that when you become an adult, you have that same mentality and relationship with money that can actually, as you say, then hold you back from being wise with your wealth and taking care of it as you work and earn it and go through life. Yeah. So if you want to let people know where they can connect, that would be great. Because, if anyone is listening and wants advice, I know Philly's really open to having a chat with you, and then, no commitment there to work together. But because so many people haven't ever thought about this, if this has really opened up your mind, then connect with Philly.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm Philly Financial on Instagram, and my website is phillyfinancial.co.uk. So always happy to have a chat. And I don't give financial advice. So if it's anything around your pension or tax, then I can point you in the direction of a good accountant or financial planner. But for all things sort of practical and psychological, I'm very happy to help.
Yeah, and I know you've also worked with couples as well. So, you know, although you focus on women, sometimes people come in, and that's something which is very effective to do as a partnership, isn't it? Yeah, it's very effective to be coached together as a couple and work out your joint relationship with money. And I know Philly's also got a free guide that I'll pop the link to in the show notes, which can get you started. Just 5 things that she shares about what might help you if she'd known those sooner. So I can pop all of that into the show notes.
Thanks so much. Yes, it's interesting working with couples as well as with individuals, just because, again, quite often it's that communication. Quite often you're coming from different backgrounds. Maybe one of you came from a wealthy background, maybe both came from similar parents and one of you's dealing with it differently. We all respond to situations differently. So I enjoy working with couples as well as individuals.
Yeah, brilliant. So thanks again, Philly. I really appreciate your time, and, you know, thanks for sharing your wisdom and thoughts and tips as well with the audience.
Great. Thanks so much.